Okay, so we're back for group 3 and group four's responses. So let's take a look here. So question 1, this is again group 3, Zion, Vaibhav, Yining, Lily, Sadman. Okay, so Varagur doesn't explicitly connect the Foucault quotation to the paragraph before or after it. Instead, she leaves the connection implicit, so it is up to us to close read in order to unpack what this connection is. So in fact, a useful definition of close reading is the practice of making the implicit explicit, right? So what isn't directly stated clear to your reader. To help us do so, explore the following questions. So A, what relationship does Varagur seem to be establishing between skincare regimens and Foucault's notion of discipline? What do these words, regimen and discipline, have in common? Okay, so the other questions for the other groups have been building up to this question, placing these two concepts together. So regimens means a formulated course of medical treatment, right? It's prescribed by an authority figure in order for the restoration of health, and discipline means the actions of training people to obey rules or the behavior using punishment. So Varga indicates that skincare should originally be a meaningful medical treatment to keep people healthy. But since people are afraid of the punishment for bad skin, they make the body follow the discipline and make it become a machine. Good. Although these two words both refer to rules, Varga establishes that discipline people are following is too serious and abnormal compared to the regimen. Okay, so yeah, this is strong interpretive work here. Um, right, so if skincare is simply a regimen, then right, it's prescribed by, right, let's say a medical authority in this case in terms of skincare. And it's to keep people healthy, to achieve better skin. Um, However, right, the fact that this regimen has become a discipline it indicates that it has more to do with power and submission, right? So getting someone to follow rules and behaviors, right, to become docile or obedient. And so again, think about those two layers of discipline, right? So if it were simply a routine, again, the person, right, would be disciplining their skin, right? And the skin would become obedient. Okay, but in the larger picture, right, societal expectations for gender, corporate interests, right, in terms of the skincare industry, they're establishing these rules and these regimens in order to get women to perform their expected gender roles, right, to, again, value their external appearance and to spend a lot of money and a lot of time improving that appearance constantly. And out of that discipline, right, that increases, as we'll see with group four's questions, these corporations are making a good amount of money. Okay, so B, base a response to the following questions on the connection being made between the quotation and the first paragraph. If to discipline means to train someone to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience, who or what is being trained in the scenario where skincare regimens function as a form of discipline? Okay, so again, that pattern, getting in that routine of, going to dictionary definitions and breaking those down to help you develop a fuller response. Okay, so the body is doing the training to get the good skin that people want with these skin regimens. Okay, so again, as I just mentioned, right, so it's not the body doing the training. So in one sense, it's the person, right, the woman training her skin, disciplining her skin so it obeys her and becomes more perfect. And but in the larger picture, right, it's the woman that's being disciplined, right? And her body is being made into a machine that conforms to these societal rules and expectations of gender, and also to the kind of larger rules of capitalism, right? Continue to consume and to buy products and to never be satisfied to want to buy more products, right? Good. So group 3 then will come in and revise this response, right? So again, part of the follow-up activity is to take notes based on this video or the series of videos, and to go back in and to make those responses fuller and more accurate so that we can use these as a resource to help prepare for the reading quiz on Wednesday. Okay, so who or what is doing the training? So in one sense, on the individual level, it's the woman, but larger scale, it's society's expectations of gender, right, and the skincare industry. Okay. Okay, so in terms of rules, these codes of behaviors, right? So definitely here, gendered codes of behavior, right? So these larger forces are kind of determining, the kinds of behaviors and things that you value if you're a woman or if you're a man, right? And if you don't kind of conform to those rules, if you disobey them, then society kind of punishes you in particular ways, right? They think that you're unfeminine. They think you're a tomboy, right? And so we want to keep that into consideration. And so we will revise this response to make it fuller, more accurate. So what form might disobedience take in this scenario? In other words, who or what would be disobeying the rules, and what might this disobedience look like? What might the one doing the discipline stand to lose if the rules are not obeyed? Okay, so again, right, we've been implying that so far in our discussion. So disobedience would be, okay, so I'm supposed to value my external appearance to such a degree that I go to these extremes where I'm committing violence, right, to my own body. I'm wounding it. I'm breaking the skin barrier, right? Okay, so to disobey that, I would be like, yeah, I would be like Varagur, right? So perfect skin doesn't exist. And skin actually is an organ that protects our body. So let's value it for the fact that it is an organ, right? And it protects our body, and not in terms of how we can use it to conform to societal notions of gender, right? So, okay, I'm not going to buy all of these products, right? I'm going to think of keeping my skin healthy in terms of it being an organ so it can continue to protect me from disease, right? Um, okay, and right, so if we think about the ones doing the discipline in this larger picture as society and corporate interests, right, skincare companies, then yeah, they lose profit, right? If women aren't continuing to kind of buy into these prescribed rules of gender and discipline, then they lose money, right? And society loses out because these gender roles, right, that are clearly defined for men and women, they're no longer so clear, right, if people start rebelling against them. Okay, and group 4, so Hije, Sejin, Jude, and Aditi. So what does Varagur mean when she says that the end product of a skincare regimen isn't perfect skin, but the regimen itself? So the end product of a skincare regimen, the perfect and blemishless skin, cannot exist anywhere. Regimen cannot make our skin perfect, it's just a regimen itself. Yeah, and here we're getting into Foucault, right? So it's the idea that it's not so much what the skincare regimen can do for us as an instrumental good, right? To get us to more perfect skin. And right, as Margaret mentions, right, perfect skin does not exist. So it's this idea that we are trained to think that discipline is a necessary thing in an ongoing process, right? And that ongoing process keeps us conforming to societal expectations for gender, and feeding these companies who market their products in a way that make us feel insecure, and that we need to put money into bettering our bodies, right, and making them, improving them is her language, right? So 2, how might Vargar's statement in question 1 be related to the difference that philosophers make between intrinsic goods and instrumental good? Okay, so we just basically covered that, right? This idea that a skincare regimen isn't really about getting better skin, the instrumental good, right? Getting perfect skin, because perfect skin doesn't exist. It's about the intrinsic good, right? Thinking of the regimen of extreme skincare as a good in and of itself, right? In the sense that it conveys to the outside world, look how good I am. I'm conforming to the rules. I'm disciplining myself. I'm keeping that up. I'm stepping it up, right? Every so often, right? To spend money on different projects or whatever. So 3, why does she use the word product here rather than, for example, result? Okay, again, this is a question that is framed to get you close reading, right? So again, close read, okay, go to the dictionary, use that precise definition to help you brainstorm, and then think, okay, well, this word, how would this sentence read differently if the writer had used a different word that essentially means the same thing, but how would that change the meaning? Okay, so she uses product here instead of result because she's illustrating her point that taking care of your skin doesn't always give you the perfect skin or results. Sometimes the product is being satisfied with a way of life you have proceeding using skincare, even though the results aren't always there. Okay, so we're heading the right direction here. So here, why didn't she just say the end result of the skincare regimen isn't perfect skin, but the regimen itself? Okay, well, this ties back in, right, to the role that skincare corporations have, right, and the interests that are being served by conforming to these societal expectations for gender by consuming and buying these products, right, keeping the wheels of capitalism moving. And so product, right, if you look it up in the dictionary, right, it has a material or commercial meaning. And so, right, you buy a product, right? You sell a product. And so instead of a result, she's emphasizing that this is all this active discipline is all happening within the framework of capitalism, within the framework of buying and consuming goods and continuing to consume goods, right? Okay, 4, what does Varagur mean when she uses the phrase high American style? And I think this is really one of the most challenging parts besides Foucault's notion of discipline. So how does the immediate context of this passage help to define it? So the immediate context helps us to imagine what people desire for and why we constantly want to escalate our skin to make it perfect and blemishless. This high American lifestyle produces a negative connotation, and that ties into number 6 as well, to the context as if all Americans practice something of high maintenance with low rewards. Okay, and we constantly used to escalate our skincare. Okay, yeah, and so basically this high American style, if we come back to the passage, it has everything to do with the larger frameworks we've been talking about. So societal expectations for gender and also this larger framework of capitalism and the role that skincare corporations play in encouraging and marketing this particular form of discipline and shaping this particular way in which women discipline their bodies to kind of make them into machines that ideally conform to these standards, right, and keep buying products. And so here, right, so something that in high American style, you have to steadily escalate over time lest you stagnate. Don't you want to improve? So in other words, it's not that you can just kind of conform to this particular regimen and just keep doing that the rest of your life and be good and disciplined, right? The idea is you have to keep stepping it up. And so within the framework of capitalism, that means you keep buying new and different products, right? You keep thinking of new and different ways that you can prove to society, look how hard I'm working at being feminine, right? And so we want to kind of think about that larger framework to help more fully develop your responses when you go to revise. Okay, and so, okay, we looked at 3, 4. Okay, so 5. So what does this high American style reveal about American values? So within this framework of, right, capitalism and product, right? So American values, right? There's a commercial sense to these values, right? So it both indicates that we are constantly seeking perfection, right? And we're never satisfied. We have to kind of keep stepping up our game. Also that we're competitive, right? That we want to display to others, look at how well I'm doing and disciplining myself. Look at how much money I'm spending in that process. Yeah, so this idea that American values are kind of, in some sense, at their core, commercial, right, or superficial. And she certainly coming into question 6, right, has a negative attitude toward that. And again, that's re-emphasized by the title of the essay, right, the skincare con. So again, this all kind of ties back into this notion of audience, right? So here, before you start a militant skincare regimen, think of these things, right? Think about this larger picture. And one way of doing so is to think about Foucault's notion of discipline, right? Okay, so that's a good segue to the second part, our follow-up activity for today. So again, the first part of this follow-up group activity or group work is to take notes during these videos as we reviewed the activity, and using those to revise your responses to make them fuller and more accurate so that they better help prepare us for the quiz on Wednesday. Okay, and the second part is to read the passages below and respond to questions 1 and 2 in the space provided for each group. Okay, so if we take a look, we'll look at the passages first. Okay, so we have 4 passages, okay, and they're pretty short, no longer than a couple of paragraphs. And so question 1, so based on the passages below, what can we tell about the specific group of people who Varagur imagines as her intended audience? What assumptions is she making about her audience? Okay, so our discussion so far in these videos is getting us to a more and more specific and detailed description of who her target or intended audience is. So we want to follow up with that. So how is that audience being reaffirmed or perhaps further specified in these later passages in the text? Okay, so first what we're going to do is you're going to annotate. So each group will be responsible for annotating the passage below that corresponds with their group number. So for instance, group 1, you guys will be responsible for annotating passage 1. Okay, and for your annotations, what you're going to do is underline words and phrases that reveal something to us, right? Close reading verbs reveal something to us about Varagur's intended audience. So in other words, we're close reading these passages and we're annotating to help with that process. Okay, so again, words and phrases that reveal something about her intended audience, and then add marginal comments indicating why you've underlined those particular words or phrases. Okay, and then once you do that, once you've annotated your particular passage, then you are going to respond to the 2 questions here, question 1, question 2. And make sure that while each group is responsible for annotating only the passage with a number that corresponds to their group number, each group should read all the passages, there are 4 of them, so read all 4 below in order to formulate an overall response to the question above. And be sure to incorporate quotations, snippets of quotation to support your responses. And of course, ideal words and phrases to requote, right, to pull out of those passages are going to be probably some of the ones that each group has underlined and annotated, right? So take a look at the annotations that each group makes and use that to inform your overall response. Okay, and so our follow-up question here is a Unit 3 question specifically. So do you consider yourself part of this intended audience? So why or why not? If you are not part of her target audience, what might be the value of her argument for you? And here again, you want to think of that bigger argument, right? That wider context. Okay, so for this question, each group member is going to respond individually and making connections to how others have responded if possible, kind of replying to other people's responses if people have already responded. So be sure to include your name to identify your response. Okay, so if we look at the kind of structured space here for our responses, so we have the passages here. Again, each group annotates their designated passage. And then question 1, so group 1, right, is going to respond here, 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 here. And again, you're integrating quotations from each of the passages. And again, these responses should cover all 4 passages, not just the one you annotated. Okay, and question 2 is getting at this larger framework, right? The larger implications and stakes of Varagur's argument. So now that you've read the full article, let's think about how let's think about her overall message. This article is about skincare, but it isn't only about skincare. In other words, the article uses the quote unquote new skincare as a case study to make a larger point about the relationship between gender, discipline, and capitalism. So what is this larger point? And again, just reviewing the work that we did last week, we are well on our way to figuring out what that message is, right? So each group then will have space here to come in and generate a response to question 2. Okay, so I look forward to your responses, and there'll be a follow-up video on those responses, and that will put us in good shape for quiz 3. Okay, and so just to check in with you, before you get started on the group work and examining these passages that are going to help us get even fuller sense of Varager's intended audience, let's pause and think about what we can say so far about her target audience. So who is her intended audience, right? So what are some of the details we can use to describe that particular audience? Okay, so go ahead and jot down some notes. Okay, good. Yeah. So if we think back to that first paragraph, right? So before you start a militant skincare regimen, so she's targeting people who are considering doing this new militant, violent skincare regimen and trying to get them to reconsider, right? Okay, and then this paragraph as well is important. So this is actually passage 1 to get us started on our next round of group work. Okay, so I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.